Come on in, welcome to my home. Today, we are going to talk about the breakfast casserole that I made in the Christmas Eve episode because I've remade it before. If you're wondering the recipe, it is listed down below in the links or in the description. Yeah, it's down below in the description. But I will tell you from how I did it the first time and how I did it the second time. There are some things I would add to that recipe and some things that I would change. And also, there are some hacks that you can do, but we'll get into that. We're going to go over to Voice Over Me, which will walk you through what I did both times that I made it and show you how I changed the recipe and how it turned out. Just following the recipe as it was written, using the vegetables that you were supposed to, and these are fresh. You can see me chopping them and getting them ready to actually use. Dicing the onions is really easy. With a few cuts, you can have your onions all diced and sliced, and it only took about a half an onion to do the full 3/4 of a cup. Now the peppers, it did take a couple peppers, and I like to use the different colored peppers because it then adds some variety to your breakfast casserole. They were really easy to cut and slice. You can decide if you want to keep the seeds in it or not. That's up to you. I do like to remove the ribs and the seeds, then dice it and slice it. But that is a pretty sharp knife that I've been using, and I do enjoy that knife. It did only take 2 peppers to get the right amount of peppers, so that was something nice. This time, as I was doing it, I just quickly cut it. Making sure that you go through your pre-sliced mushrooms is an important thing. Even though they say that they're clean, I did notice that some of my mushrooms were not as clean as I would have liked them to be. So as I was rinsing them off, I did double check and make sure that there was nothing that I did not want to eat on the mushrooms, and that I did go through each mushroom to clean it off, double check it, and make sure it was ready to go. The same thing holds true with your spinach. I personally like to wash my spinach off in cold water so that way it is ready to go. Just a quick rinse, making sure everything is nice and clean, and we are ready. Now, I will tell you going into this that there's something that I forget in the recipe, and I do add it later. I should have de-stemmed more of the spinach, but I got it all taken care of. Alright, we are starting off with our sausage in the pan. If you follow the recipe, you are supposed to put the oil in the pan before you put the sausage in. I did not do that. I don't know what I was thinking when I totally spaced that out. But yeah, you'll follow that, putting the sausage into the pan. And then you will start making sure that you take your sausage, and you want to make sure it is all broken up so that way you have nice pieces of sausage for your thing which you're going to brown. Browning it goes pretty quickly, and about now I'm realizing that, hey, I forgot the oil, so I use my oil spritzer to brown the sausage. Then the seasoning, they say you can use rosemary or Italian seasoning. I used Italian seasoning for both versions of this, and it worked out well. As it's browning, I am breaking up more of the meat because it does call for that in the recipe. Now, this is where I'm oiling my pan, and then I just spray it with olive oil, and then I will take that and using a brush, I will brush the olive oil around in the pan to make sure that it is nice and evenly coated. Once it's coated, those breadcrumbs, or I'm sorry, not breadcrumbs, bread cubes go in there. I went straight from the bag, and I'm using seasoned bread cubes. You can use their regular just bread, but I used the seasoned because I liked the cubes being seasoned. I think it gave it an extra wonderful taste and flavor. And you can definitely taste the sage in this. Now we are mixing up more of that meat, making sure it gets brown. You are not going to cook this all the way through. You don't have to. You want to get it like 90% done, simply because it will cook more as you are making it. But that's the nice part about this is a make ahead thing. Once you're cooking it and you're breaking it up and you're making that meat so it gets done, browned, that sort of thing. Now, one of the things which I will tell you right now is the fact that I personally found that both versions of this, there was excess liquid that I then just let cook off, and I did like doing that simply because the liquid there was lots and lots of liquid between the spinach and the mushrooms. That is something you're going to have to think about, is how much liquid is left in there. Then you're going to dump in all of your vegetables with your onions, and then of course your peppers, followed by your mushrooms, and of course we cannot forget our spinach. Now, one thing that you will notice is that in this pan, it's full. It's really full. I could have very easily done this in a crock pot or done this in a wok, but I did not. Yes, using a big enough pan is important, because you won't do what I did and slop everything everywhere all over the place. So now I'm going to just heat this up and let everything reduce. This is where I ran into my first case of it is a lot of liquid. And in case you're wondering what gives off all that liquid, oh yeah, I put in the garlic. It is the mushrooms and it is the spinach, and this is going to cook down, and it takes a while. Cook off all that extra liquid, because you are really going to want to do this so that way you don't have any extra liquid in your breakfast casserole. And we'll fast forward really quick. Once it has all cooked down, I spoon this on there, and you'll see why. Because see all that liquid that's in there? Yeah, and that's even after reducing it for quite a while. I'm sure you will be way, way better at making sure that all of the mixture gets onto the breadcrumbs. Make sure that it is distributed evenly on the breadcrumbs, and then you are ready for the next step, which part of that next step is letting this cool. The number of eggs that it does take is 12, and you will go through all 12 eggs, and I do think it needs all 12 eggs. Now, you can make your life a little bit easier and use something like eggs that are already cracked and mixed together, which is absolutely fine. There's no problem with you doing that. Once you have all of your eggs cracked, then you're going to do your mixing stages, and this is when I realized quite quickly that 1 cup of cheese just doesn't seem to be enough. You are going to want more than 1 cup of cheese, but remember to make sure that you thoroughly mix up those eggs before you go on to that step where you're adding your half and half. You could do this with heavy cream, but both versions of this I did do with half and half. But you want to thoroughly mix this up. Don't have any streaks left in there, and you'll thank me for that later so it doesn't look strange and awkward. I personally did not measure my salt and pepper. I just used my salt and pepper and sprinkled it on there. I think you can do that just fine. You should be able to eyeball how much salt and pepper it should take. Now, depending upon your breadcrumbs, I'm jumping ahead. But if you use seasoned breadcrumbs, you might want to go a little bit lighter on the salt and pepper. That was my half and half that I just put in there, giving that nice thorough mixing. I should have switched over to a spoon instead of the whisk, but yeah, I didn't, so that's a thing. Getting the area all nice and cleaned so that way we are ready for our next step. Which that's when I realized that 1 cup of cheese is not going to do that. Looking at that, you could barely even tell that there was any cheese in there. And I like things to be sort of cheesy. So now we're ready to dump this. And all you're doing is literally dumping this on top of your mixture. And trying not to spill it onto the counter. Don't be like I did. I found that as I was dumping this on there, the cheese wanted to stay in one spot. So I did spread out the cheese to make sure that it was evenly distributed. This is the part where if you are making this ahead, you can stop there. Even in the recipe, it does tell you to wait for a certain amount of time before you go ahead and finish it. So it needs to be refrigerated, and the bread will absorb a lot of that liquid, a lot of the eggs and milk mixture. So you just cover it with foil and then it's ready to hold, which that makes life so much easier. And I enjoyed that. So that's how the recipe is supposed to be made with the addition of the extra cheese, because I didn't think 1 cup was enough. But there are other ways you can make this recipe which has this mostly the same ingredients, but it goes a little faster. Let's check that out. So how can you do this when you don't have tons of time? Well, I used seasoned breadcrumbs this time. Didn't have tons of time to do the whole breadcrumb thing. So I thought, no. And then I was thinking, well, what else can I do to make my life easier? I did remember to put the oil in the pan, but there are other things which you don't have to necessarily use things which you are doing all from the beginning. If you can think of cheating ways, and one of the simplest ways is to actually use things that are pre-packaged. In this, I used a lot of frozen items. I used, which I thought was kind of good, kind of bad. I used frozen spinach this time. I did thaw the spinach and tried to drain it as well as I could, but I did use frozen spinach in this. And also, when it came time for the peppers and the onions, I thought, well, if I can use frozen spinach in this, I can also use frozen onions and peppers. There's a mixture that had green onions, green peppers, red peppers, and onions already cut up. I used the same amount that I would have used if I had been using the fresh items, and it did make life so much easier, and it went so much faster. But I personally did not think that it tasted the same. That's a big thing. So then, once again, it goes the same way. I'm using the garlic, is already chopped garlic. I just put in there, saute it. Once again, you still have that extra moisture in there, so you're going to want to cook that off. I cooked that off a lot this time, and it cooked really easily. Then we just take our mixture and dump it on top of our breadcrumbs, and just like before, you're going to spread that out evenly. It is really easy to do because this one it uses the bread to absorb the egg mixture, which is really nice, and it gives you sort of a sandwichy kind of texture thing to it. It is really, I know that doesn't sound like it makes much sense, but it does. It works really well. And the first time I saw this, I was thinking, there's no way this is going to work because that's not enough eggs. It is. It's enough eggs. It works well. Make sure that you have your sausage mixture spread evenly. Then once again, the same thing happens with the eggs. You want to make sure that those eggs are well beaten Then you're going to add your half and half. You could use heavy cream if you want to. You didn't have to, but you could use heavy cream. I did think that the half and half worked really well if you wanted more of that full-bodied taste. You could also use butter to grease your pan instead of oil. I personally think the oil was fine, but butter would probably give you more flavor. And this is one of those moments where I was just like, well, half a cup, maybe, 1 cup, we'll see if this works, because I had an idea. I did have an idea up my sleeve on how to deal with this. Then you're just going to try to pour this evenly over your pan. This one I should have mixed. If I had a big mixing bowl or a big measuring cup, you could do this in a big measuring cup, which would then probably work a lot better, because then pouring it would be so much easier. Then looking at that, that's when I realized that no, the extra cheese, why not just sprinkle it on top? That really works. Sprinkling the extra cheese on top and then spreading it out. It gives you a nice even coating for that extra cheese. Then you're ready to do just like we did before. You are absolutely ready to cover it over, and then you can let it sit for, I think it was 30 minutes to 24 hours. If you let it sit for the longer time, you were supposed to let them both sit in the refrigerator for that amount of time. Then once it's ready to bake, you just bake it, and when it's done, you get this wonderful meal. Now it was a lot of fun. I can tell you that was a ton of fun to make. It was really good. Everybody loved it. People have even asked for the link to the recipe, and I have given family and friends that link. It works out really well. It's pretty easy to make either way that you do it. And of course, as I said in the video, what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be added by my personal opinion, and how far ahead you can make it. It is so easy and so wonderful. I'd like to take this time to thank these wonderful people who give me the opportunity to try in these different recipes and also variations of them. If you'd like to become one of the Patreon family or one of the channel members, go ahead and click that link, because you will get these videos early and you get a weekly vlog with a behind the scenes of my life, what goes into making these videos, and even we do some there are some cleaning videos, laundry videos, all of that stuff is there. You can check that out. It helps support this channel and gives me the ability to make bigger and better videos. So that's going to be something. We are going to be working really hard this year on our Christmas, so that is something to look forward to. And I have quite a few different recipes coming up that we're going to be trying out. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope I get to see you again the next time you stop by.